You're listening to the Youth for Life podcast with Michelle Baum, Director of Why for Life at Lutherans for Life, where we prepare youth to be gospel-motivated voices for life. Be sure to stick around after today's live recording of our Chats for Life program to find out how you can be live too on our next Youth for Life podcast. Welcome to Chats for Life. Today we are talking with Carol Tobias, who is the president of National Right to Life, and we are so excited that she is here to join us this evening. Thanks to those of you who are tuning in on our podcast. We hope that you learned something about being a gospel-motivated voice today too. Let's go ahead and open with prayer, and then I'm going to jump right into having Carol tell us about the work that she does. So if you'll please pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for the opportunity to not only rejoice in the life you have given us, but also in the life that you have prepared for so many others. We ask, Lord, that you would be with Carol this evening, and we thank you for her work that has upheld life in the past and continues to uphold life today. We ask, Lord, that you would equip us, that we might be voices for life, gospel-motivated voices that share why life is important, and that is because you made it and you love it. We ask, Lord, that this evening be an opportunity to learn and to grow, and a way to prepare for the lives you have ready for us to serve in the future. All of these things we ask for in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, well, welcome, and please, I'm just going to have you jump right in and share with us a little bit about your position, what you do, and what the National Right to Life does. And I know you have some other things to talk about too, so thanks again.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michelle, for asking me to be with you tonight. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to be with members of my own church body. I'm a member of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But I happen to be in North Dakota this week visiting with my mom. So I'm just thrilled to be here with you. I am the president of National Right to Life. I started out as the executive director many years ago of North Dakota Right to Life, and then became the political director for National Right to Life. And I am now in my, I believe, 12th year as president of the organization. National Right to Life is a nationwide network. We have an affiliate in each of the 50 states and the District of Columbia. We have local chapters in many of the communities around the country. And we have kind of, I guess I would say, like maybe three main avenues of getting our message out. We work on political action, trying to elect candidates who will speak up for life, for unborn children and their mothers, for those who are elderly with disabilities, maybe being pressured into assisted suicide. We work to elect candidates who are going to stand up and be a strong voice for innocent human life. We also work then on legislation, because once we've gotten these men and women elected, or at least hope to, tried to, and often succeeded, then of course there are some things that they can do using their positions in state legislatures and Congress and the White House to make a difference for life. So we do the elections, the political action legislation, but then we also work on education, because we know that we have to change hearts and minds. We can't just pass laws if the people are not agreeing with us. So we have to continue to convince them and educate them about how precious each and every life is, that every life from the moment of fertilization is a unique creation, someone that will never be duplicated. So we have to work on hearts and minds. So many of our groups are doing, booths at state fairs, and of course working with social media, and just trying to, speaking in churches, at social clubs, just talking to their neighbors, just trying to reach out to people and let them know that life is precious and we need to protect it. So that's kind of an overall, the purpose, the goals of National Right to Life. What I want to talk to you about tonight are some of the laws that are on the books, and maybe how we got to where we are. But I'm going to kind of break this into, I guess, 3 different portions, and we can take questions after each one if that's easier, rather than waiting for all of them at the end. But first, I want to talk about legislation, where we were and how we got to where we are. And then I want to talk about the abortion pill, because that is now the #1 method of abortion. More than half of all abortions in the country are done using the abortion pill. So I want to talk about that a bit. And then I also want to talk about the difference between the pro-life and the pro-abortion movement, and how we look at women and how we help women and their children compared to our opponents. And I just, I'll get to that when we get to it. But anyway, for now, I want to start off a little bit with some legislation, just information. Back when, the Supreme Court in 1973 found that there was a right to abortion in the United States Constitution. And for several years, the states were trying to pass legislation to overturn Roe, to try to get the court to make changes to it. And the court was pretty entrenched. They allowed some state laws to stand, but they, of course, struck others. Some of what we were working on was no tax funding of abortion. Our tax dollars shouldn't be used to pay for abortion. And the Supreme Court said, that's okay. You can do that. You can't limit abortion, but you can say that tax dollars don't have to pay for it. We tried to get some laws that say the father of the unborn child should have a say in whether or not that child's life is ended. And the court said, no, that decision is totally up to the mother. Informed consent. We really thought that it was important that women know what they were getting into if they went through with the abortion. I don't know how many of you have had surgeries. I've had a couple of them, and the doctors will go through. This is why I think the surgery would be your best, avenue of healing or, correction, whatever needed to be done. But there are complications, or there could be something that comes as a side effect to that surgery, and you need to know what those are before you make that decision. And there are also some alternatives. They might not be as good, they might not work as good, but you have to know what else you could do if you don't want surgery. Those are the kinds of things that are done with any medical or surgical procedure, but it didn't have to be done with abortion. Women did not have to be given that kind of specific information. They didn't have to be told about possible complications. They didn't have to be told about alternatives that are available. So many of our state groups were successful in passing laws to require that the abortionist provide that kind of information to the mother. And in later years, they actually were very successful in getting states to include ultrasounds, so that a woman considering an abortion would have to be told if she wants to see an ultrasound of her baby, they would provide that for her. So that was one of the big ones that we thought really, tried to convince women, or, let them know that this isn't as easy as they're telling you. Parents' rights. Do parents have the right to know if their minor daughter is pregnant and considering an abortion? Several states passed those kinds of laws. The judges came back and said, you can do that, but only if you give the girl an out by letting her speak to, go to some judge that would determine she is old enough and mature enough to make, not old enough, but mature enough to make that decision, so that her parents don't have to be told or, notified, or even give their consent. So we had to have a judicial bypass to get around the parents. And in many cases, the abortion industry just found a judge in the local community that would just rubber stamp any request. So young girls under a certain age were able to get that abortion without their parents knowing about it. One that I thought was very effective was the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. How many people in this country realize that when an unborn child is aborted, depending on the age of the baby, he or she can feel pain? And this was, I think, a tremendous eye-opener for many people. Wait a minute, unborn children can feel pain? So yeah, let's pass a bill that if they have developed to that stage, they can't be aborted. And that was actually kind of the trigger. Some states, it started off as, 22 weeks gestation, 22 weeks into the pregnancy. We knew there was enough evidence that the baby can feel pain. But over the years, that has come down so that it was by 20 weeks they can feel pain. And then some research came out saying that the baby has developed to the point where even 15 weeks, they could feel pain. I was struck by an article I saw. There was a researcher in England who actually was very active in the abortion movement. And he was kind of scoffing, babies don't feel pain, that's ridiculous. But then he started looking into it. He came back and said, not only can they feel pain, it's possible they can feel pain at 12 weeks. He was willing to bring it down even earlier than what some of the others had. So we, passed that bill in law in many states. But it was that bill, kind of along that thinking, that Mississippi then came up and said, we're going to protect unborn children at 15 weeks because they can feel pain at that time. And that is the bill, the law, that ended up before the Supreme Court. And as you all know, in Dobbs v. Jackson, the court used that Mississippi law to say, we're overturning Roe v. Wade. It's going to be up to the elected representatives to make these laws, that the courts need to stay out of it, that this is something, that the right to kill unborn children is not in the Constitution. So let the people make those decisions through their elected representatives. So that was kind of the big start. We were all excited, been trying to do this for 50 years to overturn Roe v. Wade. It finally happened. And actually before that, several states, kind of hoping and expecting that something like this could happen, started passing what we called trigger laws. And they were set up so that if the Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade, this would immediately become the law of the state. And almost all of them were protecting unborn children from the moment of conception, unless the mother's life was in danger. Some of them had, a few more exceptions, maybe rape or incest or severe physical, long-lasting damage to the mother. But these were excellent laws, and many of them went into effect, if not the same day, then within days and weeks following that decision. So we had several states that immediately protected unborn children once the court overturned Roe. We had at one point 20 states that had no abortions allowed in their state unless the mother's life was in danger, or, as I said, in some very rare circumstances. But unfortunately, where the federal courts had been stopping pro-life laws throughout the country for most of 50 years, we now have state judges and state courts doing the same thing within their states. Like in Arizona, they had an old law that it was over 150 years old, still on the books, said abortion is wrong, we're going to protect babies. So of course, everyone was excited. Once Roe was overturned, that law was now the law of the state. Court stepped in and said no. So they have a law on the books now that says abortion is allowed up to 15 weeks. Utah had the same thing. They were, they had a trigger law, but they had a court step in and say, no. So now their law it's pending. Their law is still in effect, but if a judge decides against the so-called trigger law that went into effect, their law would say abortion is allowed up to 18 weeks. We have 5 states that passed bills that have laws on the books now protecting unborn children up to 6 weeks, anything after 6 weeks, because that is when the heartbeat can be detected. Now, the heartbeat has started before that, but at least by 6 weeks, the heartbeat can be detected. So we've got 5 states that have that law. And then we've got 2 states that unfortunately went with 12 weeks. We were hoping for something a little tighter, but we're going to keep working. It's North Carolina and Nebraska. We're going to see if we can get something a little tighter to protect more babies. Unfortunately, we have 25 states and the District of Columbia that have no law on abortion, or the law says there are no limits on abortion. Some of them will say abortion is allowed up to viability, but viability is determined by the abortionist. If a woman is 30 weeks pregnant and goes in and says, I want an abortion, and the abortionist is willing to do it, he can just determine the baby isn't viable and do the abortion. There is no second opinion required. So in effect, we've got 25 states, and that unfortunately includes Ohio, which had the ballot measure go down or pass in their state. The pro-lifers lost that last November. And then in Wisconsin, they had a great law, again, more than 150 years old, but their Supreme Court struck it. So they now also have no law on the books. So the country is pretty evenly divided. 25 states have some type of law protecting unborn children. 25 states and the District of Columbia have no law or allow pretty much unlimited abortion. As you know, I mentioned the ballot measures, we did see, of course, I mean, that's been kind of the heartbreak of the Dobbs decision, is that we've got states putting ballot measures before the people, and so far they have been successful in passing them. We are going to work very hard this year to try to stop some of them. I know we won't get all of them. New York and Maryland have ballots, will have measures on the ballot for sure this year. Possibly we could see Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, Florida, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, South Dakota. You know, there are several others that could actually have something on the ballot this fall. So we don't know what they all or who they all are yet. But we're going to do everything we can to try to stop those. And what we are finding is that, you know, it's been the case for 50 years. People want abortion in certain circumstances. They do not support unlimited abortion for all 9 months of pregnancy, but they don't support life of the mother only legislation. They really, a majority of the people in this country think abortion should be allowed if the woman is a victim of rape. If the child, I guess, is going, you'd say, is going to die anyway, even after, you know, baby might be born, but born dying in those cases. And if the mother herself has severe physical, long-lasting damage from the abortion, excuse me, from the delivery, they want exceptions in those rare cases. Now that those cases are going to take up 5% or less of all abortions that are performed in the country. But the people want those exceptions. And you've got people thinking, you know, if it's my daughter, my wife, my sister, you know, if she's raped, she needs to have the right to get an abortion. And if that's where they are, then they are voting for these ballot measures. Because if it's all or nothing, they are willing to take nothing, I mean, all abortions rather than no abortions. So that's kind of where we find ourselves. You know, as pro-lifers, as Christians, we want to save all those babies. But that's not where the public is. So we are having to look at, you know, what do we do? We've got some states saying, okay, well, let's add those exceptions. In West Virginia, right after Dobbs, I think their governor called a special session. They brought in that type of bill, and they added rape, incest, severe damage to the mother. And I think fetal anomaly is in there. I would have to double check. I should have, but I'm not sure, but I think it's in there. But it was tight enough that the abortion facilities in the state closed down. And they don't have abortions happening in the state. If they are, it's going to be the very rare circumstance that is done in a hospital with doctors, you know, who are taking very good care of both mother and child, if possible. So that's, you know, kind of where we are when it comes to the ballot measures. It's going to be tough when, you know, as pro-lifers, we want life of the mother only. And I don't know if we may lose everything if we stick to that position. So that's something that we really have, you know, I'm really grappling with. Do we start amending the laws to allow those rare circumstances? Now, that doesn't mean we approve of it, and it doesn't mean we support that, but we're recognizing that we are not in a Christian culture, and we've got people who are not accepting, you know, life is a gift from God. All life is precious. All life should be protected. Not everybody is there. But we can still work with those cases. You know, if a woman is a victim of rape, maybe legally she could get the abortion, but we want to talk to her and work with her and convince her that killing her baby isn't going to solve the problem. If it's a woman who's got some severe physical, problems, is there a way that she can get the help and care that she needs so that both mother and child can live? We don't just toss them into the streets because the law doesn't, come into or wouldn't come into effect and protect the baby at that time. But there are other ways that we can work in those circumstances. So that's, kind of where we are now. We've got an election coming up. We've got candidates that are trying to do, strong pro-life candidates trying to figure out what message is going to resonate with the voters. And I guess we'll just kind of have to see where that goes. And I think with that, I am going to just stop. And if there's any questions, anything I said that was confusing, or you just like a little more explanation, let's, just open that up right now if anyone has anything they'd like to add or ask. Okay.
Go ahead, Jenna.
So I lived in Michigan for a really long time, and around last November, when they were working on the Proposal 3, which was basically our version of enshrining abortion into our state constitution, my dad and I, we weren't involved with any organizations, but we just kind of went around our neighborhood with some information about what was actually in that act and how it would affect everyone, like no matter what their belief was on abortion specifically.
Right.
We used a lot of talking points like medical transparency and parental rights and that kind of stuff. But I was just wondering, what would you suggest people focus on when they're trying to expose these kind of efforts to put abortion into our constitutions? How would you suggest we talk to people about that?
I think make sure they understand that this would be abortion with no limits whatsoever through the moment of birth. And if they can get this passed, then, they may try getting your tax dollars, but it's going to keep parents out of the decision. So I guess kind of expanding on it, this is what it's going to do, the full effect. They're telling you that this is just up to viability. It's actually going to be all 9 months. But what seemed to be working in Ohio last fall, and it came out too late, was the argument that this goes too far. Whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, this goes too far. Let's see if we can work on something, to, I don't want to say compromise, but try to convince people that you really don't want to see 7, 8, 9 months abortions. That is the Democratic Party's weak spot. And, that's what they're trying to hide and cover up. But I think I would just, this goes too far and see if it started making a difference in Ohio, but that phrasing, that argument came into the game too late, and it didn't have a chance to really resonate with the people in the state.
So speaking of words, right? Because words and phrases are powerful, and this goes too far. That's a good example of, a person who has pro-life beliefs, making it palatable for someone who doesn't have pro-life beliefs, right? And so I guess I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that it was the concept of pain, right? And the recognition that babies feel pain that swayed hearts and minds before the Dobbs decision, right? And so, it was very powerful, I think, when people were able to, that and being able to see a living being, a beating heart in the womb, right? Ultrasounds certainly change minds as well. But I'm wondering, as we're now in a society that is in a different place, right? So Roe v. Wade has been overturned. what language, what is it that you mentioned the lack of transparency for women who are getting abortions, right? Like they don't know the connection between abortions and preterm labor, or abortions and increased risk of breast cancer, or those sorts of things. Are there other techniques that you would suggest to, again, turn hearts and minds in the current condition that maybe relates to the mother? Because that seems to be, again, what they're not necessarily all pro-choice people aren't for killing babies. They're for protecting mothers, right? Or giving mothers that option to affirm and uphold their own life. So can you think of any, I guess, have you come across any language that seems to work in that area?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have a good answer for it. I think I always try to bring in stories of women that I have talked to and met over the years of how it affects them. One I think is a really good example. I had a young woman who didn't really have a place to stay. She had a little adorable, I think 3-year-old son. And she just moved in with me for, I don't know, a month or so until something else kind of worked out. So we had some really good conversations. And I found out that she was in her early 20s. She had been pregnant 4 times. The first one was a miscarriage. The second one, wait a minute, no, I'm sorry. The first one, she gave the child up for adoption. The second one was a miscarriage. The third pregnancy was the little boy that she had with her. And the 4th pregnancy ended in abortion. And I was kind of shocked as you had an abortion after you had your baby. So you knew, what was happening and, what was going on. But she was crying as she was telling me this. And she said, I would give anything to, go back and redo that abortion. She said that, of all of them, that is the one that has stayed with her. And she was just struggling and trying to deal with it. And I try to bring in stories of women that I've talked to who will, they're still struggling with the abortion years later. They're thinking about their little girl going to 1st grade. They drive by a schoolyard and they think, my daughter would be in school this time and I don't have her. My son would be graduating from high school this year. And just so many of them still have that heartache years later. And I guess that's kind of where I pivot, giving them some stories. This isn't going to be as easy as you think it is. And it's not as easy for the women as they are being told it is. That we need to do more to make sure that women realize this isn't the solution. You can do this. You're strong enough to do this. And the pro-life movement is here to help you do it.
Yeah, and I think you hit on an important point that when people make decisions, they don't always make decisions based on logic or their head. They sometimes very often make decisions based on their heart, right? The feelings and so telling the success stories and the regret stories, I think that is very moving. But it would require a one-on-one conversation, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we do have some women who will certainly speak out publicly.
Yeah.
But, letting people know that a lot of women have these problems and they're not willing to speak out because they are either embarrassed or ashamed or just hurting, and they don't want to tell people. And I guess that's kind of where, like I said, that's my fallback, to let them know that this isn't easy.
Mm-hmm. Other questions you guys have before she goes on to the next part?
Okay. I want to talk about the abortion pill. It is now the most common method used to kill unborn children. More than 50% was 53, and now it's more like 56 or 57% of all abortions are caused by the abortion pill. The proponents will say that it is safe. I'm going to go back a little bit. When it was introduced in 2000, before most of you were born. It was brought into the country. It came over from France. The purpose of the pill and the way it works is to dry up it's mifepristone is the name of the technical name of the pill. Its purpose is to dry up the progesterone in the uterus, which the progesterone is the hormone that's giving the baby the nourishment to grow and, just continue on. But this pill dries up that progesterone, so removing the nourishment from the baby, and the baby just, in effect, kind of slowly starves to death. And that is the purpose of the pill. And then they take it during for the process, they take a second pill a couple days later that will induce extreme cramping. And that muscle cramping in and around the uterus will push the baby, they will say it's just an egg at that point, but push that little body out. And that's how it works. It was brought into this country in 2000 under very strict guidelines. It could only be used up through the first 7 weeks of pregnancy. The woman had to go to the doctor, the abortionist, to get the pills, and he was supposed to do an exam because the pills do not affect the fallopian tube. So if this is an ectopic pregnancy, that fertilized egg, that new life has not made it all the way to the uterus, the baby keeps growing in the fallopian tube. The tube isn't that big, it bursts, and women can die. So they were supposed to get a physical from the doctor and then get the pills. And then they would go home, take the first pill, the mifepristone, which is going to dry up the progesterone in the uterus. A couple days later, they take the misoprostol, the prostaglandin that's going to cause the cramping. And then they go back to the doctor to make sure that either there are no retained parts, body parts from the baby, or find out if the baby somehow survived and is still alive. And then maybe they have to do the surgical abortion to complete the process. So they had some what they called guidelines, and then the FDA put on what they call REMS. If you've maybe seen this in stories, REMS, it's risk evaluation and mitigation strategies. It's kind of like, what do we do to make this dangerous pill as safe as possible for women who are going to take it? In 2016, the Food and Drug Administration just got rid of all that. They said, you don't have to visit the doctor. You can do a telemedicine call. So then, many Planned Parenthood offices set up, a little room with a computer. So a woman would come in, sit down, talk like we are now over the computer to an abortionist in another city. He would prescribe the pills, push a button actually in his office that would open a drawer in the room where she is seated, and it would be the pills. And he'd say, okay, go ahead and take, the yellow pills or whatever it was. And she would take those, and then she would go home and take the other pills a couple days later. And that was pretty much it. So they got, and you could do that up to 10 weeks instead of 7. Well, then in 2021, with COVID and everybody being told to stay away from hospitals and clinics, except the abortion facilities, those were allowed to remain open. But they just said, you know what, just forget all that. Send the pills through the mail so that the woman doesn't have to come, get out of her house to get that abortion. So this is all kind of developed into, a big court case that's actually going to end up at the Supreme Court. There was a judge in Texas that said the Food and Drug Administration back in 2000 did not follow proper procedure for bringing, legalizing this pill. So he just said mifepristone is illegal. Well, that went up to the Fifth Circuit Court, and they said, well, we're not going to go that far. But we can say that the regulations that they lifted in 2016 should be put back in place, so that they would go back to the woman has to visit with the doctor in person so that she could get a physical exam. The pills could only be in for the first 7 weeks, not 10. And those regs that were lifted had to be put back on. Well, there was another judge in Washington State that said, forget all that. They can mail the pills, they can do whatever they want. So this is now has ended up in the Supreme Court's lap. They will be ruling on this probably sometime this spring or this summer. I really don't think they are going to say mifepristone is illegal. What we are at least hoping is that they will put those safeguards back on, reduce the time to 7 weeks. The woman has to meet with the abortionist in person, or the abortion provider. It's not much, but if it saves a woman from an ectopic pregnancy, from dying, that also is going to be a plus. What's very frustrating is that the abortion industry is telling women that this is a safe procedure. And they are coming up with all kinds of studies. And if you look at the studies, most of the studies that have been done to convince people that this is a safe pill, they are being conducted by people who are actively involved or employed by the abortion industry. So they've got one study that says, abortion is safer than Tylenol. And if you look at the statistics, I've got them here, 28 women that we know of have died from mifepristone, using mifepristone, the abortion pill procedure. Whereas 150 people, that's 28 total, 150 people die from Tylenol every year. So they're saying abortion is safer than Tylenol, which everybody uses. But the problem is, let's see, I've got my figures here. I'm going to have to see if I can read them. The risk of death using mifepristone is 1 in 200,000. Okay, that does sound pretty safe. Tylenol, your chance of death is 1 in 200,000. For Tylenol, your chance is 1 in 167 million. So using the abortion pill is 833 times more likely to kill you than using Tylenol. And yet, because they're using 28 deaths versus 150 each year, they're getting away with saying it's safer than Tylenol. They aren't taking into account that a whole lot of more people use Tylenol than use mifepristone, the abortion pill. And there have been studies in other countries that will also show that this isn't safe. In the United Kingdom, they started mailing, because of COVID as well, they started mailing abortion pills into the woman's home. The ER calls for women who have problems with that pill have more than doubled in the United Kingdom. Finland did a study of 50,000 women, and that's a large study. They found that 7% needed surgical intervention. So researchers at the University of Toronto said 10.3% of the women visited using the abortion pill have visited the emergency room with some concern or complaint. In Italy, 38% of the women complained of severe pain. This is not the easy, safe method that everyone thinks it is. But the abortion industry is really trying to tell women that it is safe. And I don't know why they won't, I guess I'd say, admit that there are some problems with it. But some women, have died. One study that they are using to say that it is safe actually split, if you take, okay, it's a serious complication. You ended up in the hospital, you needed a blood transfusion versus, yeah, you were hemorrhaging, but it didn't require a blood transfusion. Maybe the abortion wasn't completed, so you needed to find a doctor who would do the surgical abortion. But the study then split those into different categories. So when they were looking at whether or not there were complications, they totally ignored everything that wasn't a severe, major problem that required hospitalization. So they just ignored, some of the complications that arose. There was one other. I'm sorry, I will think of it. But there was one other example I wanted to use to show that they are not caring. Okay, well, if we have any questions, maybe I will think of it as we're talking.
There was actually a question that came up in the chat. Is there a way we can obtain a copy of these statistics after the meeting? Do you
Yeah,
have?
I can find it. We've got National Right to Life has done stories on these in our newspaper, and I can pull some of that together and get it out to you.
That'd be perfect. So, before you leave, make sure you put your email in the chat, and then we'll forward those statistics to whichever emails are in there. So if you want a copy, that's great. Emma, go for it.
I got an email from, I believe I get all kinds of emails from pro-life organizations, but I think it was Students for Life. And if I remember correctly, or I read things correctly, there are states that are making colleges provide the abortion pill on their campus, which would initially turn college campuses into abortion facilities. They also did like a live thing, but I mean, I can only do so many things. So this is like, oh, I'll ask here. We're on a Lutheran perspective instead of, national thing. This is better.
Yes, there are college campuses that are stockpiling the abortion pill so that when the students come in, they can hand it to them. I think it was in Massachusetts where they put together a program for the colleges, and they are encouraging them to work with Planned Parenthood and abortion providers, so that either the student can get the pills on campus or off campus. But they've got an entire huge program, a new effort that they just released about a month ago, to make sure that everybody on campus supports abortion or at least knows that it's available. And they also even have in there that the staff will have to support this as well. So they're getting rid of anybody that would have a conscientious objection to abortion or to helping a student end that abortion. But we are seeing it in other states as well. I think California, Washington, and I'm not sure, I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan is also, that their governors are ordering and stockpiling the abortion pill and trying to get it available on campuses.
Good question. Are there others? Go ahead, Jenna.
Okay, so sorry, this always takes me a long time to formulate my thoughts. Now I live in Indiana, and I guess you could say that right now we're one of the good states as far as the abortion thing is going. Like, we had a piece of legislation passed that effectively bans abortion except for in cases of like rape. I think it's maternal health as well. But there are a couple other sneaky ways that our state health department is able to conceal information on whether or not that ban is being followed or not. So I'm wondering, have you seen an increase in legislation in states that are starting to ban abortion that pro-lifers should be watching out for, or techniques that they need to stay on top of?
I do know that there were some concerns about the language in the Indiana law, but I could be wrong. I thought I had heard that there are no abortion facilities or abortionists in the state. So I'm happy to be corrected if that's not true. So I think that law is in effect. I mean, is working, doing what it's supposed to.
Yeah, it is correct. I live in Indiana, and that is true.
Okay. I think there are different things that can be snuck in. If you have good pro-life members of Congress, members of the legislature introducing the bills, they just have to be on the alert, for something that could go wrong. I would assume that the people introducing these bills are hardcore pro-lifers, and they're not going to, let any shenanigans get into the legislation if they can stop it at all. So I would just say you have to make sure that you can trust the people leading the charge on the bills.
Other questions?
Okay, then what I want to also bring up is the difference, I think, between the pro-life movement and the pro-abortion movement. They are very much trying to paint us as anti-woman. We don't care about women. We just want them to have babies. And they don't really care if we try to say, well, they don't care about the babies. They just want to say that they care about women. And yet, if you look at what they have done over the years and are doing, I think we can legitimately say, and I do all the time, I do a lot of interviews, and every chance I get, I will tell the reporter, we care about mother and baby. The other side cares about neither. And if you look at, I think the case, it's very easy to lay out. I had mentioned earlier informed consent provisions that we were trying to get passed in state legislatures, making sure that women understand the complications that could arise from abortion, alternatives that are available. Why won't they tell her that an abortion can or does increase the risk of breast cancer? Now, if you watch any TV, the commercials are flooded with ads for prescription drugs. Ask your doctor about this. If you suffer from this, ask your doctor. But then half of the commercial is a disclaimer. Do not use if. This may cause, this, may do this. If this happens, seek immediate medical attention. So they're trying to sell a prescription drug, and half of the commercial is a disclaimer. Why don't they have to do that for abortion? Why don't they tell a woman that the chances of breast cancer increase if you get an abortion? They have fought tooth and nail every single piece of legislation that would require a woman be given that type of information that is on the TV for every prescription drug out there, but they don't want that to be told to her. They are going after the pregnancy centers. Now, these centers are helping a woman who has decided she wants to give birth to this child and she needs some help. So they're going to, help her with medical care, help her with baby clothes and maternity clothes. If she needs a place to stay, maybe she needs some help in, looking for a job. I know one place that does, brings in businessmen, and they help the women and, go through, this is what you would do to put together a resume to make yourself attractive for the job application. This is how you would go through the interview process. That they are trying to help these mothers in so many different ways so that they can take care of themselves and their child. The abortion industry is trying to shut them down. Joe Biden, the president, has just come out with a new plan that he's trying to, there's a program, it's TANF, and it's to help needy families, children in needy families who are struggling financially. And the pregnancy centers around the country, many of them have gotten some support. They can get the federal grants to help with the programs because they are helping families, mothers, hopefully the father, so that they can get a good job and a stable home life and take care of that child. The Biden administration has decided that the pregnancy centers don't deserve that's federal grant money. So they're trying to take them out of that. We've had states trying to force pregnancy centers to tell women where they can get an abortion and that the state will pay for it. Now, thankfully, the Supreme Court has put a stop to that and said you're infringing on their free speech, but they're still trying to do it. There is an effort to make Google and other search engines hide pregnancy centers from an online search engine so that if a woman is looking for pregnancy help, what pops up are the abortion facilities, but not the pregnancy centers. There is an effort in Congress to force the Federal Trade Commission to say that the pregnancy centers are disseminating false and misleading information. And again, trying to censor them or fine them, penalize them. However, they want to shut down the pregnancy centers. Why? If a woman wants to have the baby, why not let her find the resources that are available in her community? Abortion pill reversal. It's a fantastic solution to a woman who has started that abortion pill process and then changes her mind. She took the first pill, maybe because it might have been her parents, might have been her boyfriend, telling her, you don't want that abortion, you need to do that. So she takes the first pill and then she says, what am I doing? I don't want to do that. I want to save my baby. If she reaches out, there's a national hotline for abortion pill reversal, although I've heard that they're trying to change to abortion pill rescue, which sounds, even better. But she can make that phone call and get some help, talk to a doctor in her community. The process is that the doctor puts her on a very heavy dose of progesterone. Progesterone is that hormone that's growing in the uterus. She took the first pill, and which dries up the progesterone, which would lead to the death of that newly formed life. But she can, with an extra dosage of progesterone, replenish what that abortion pill was trying to do and save her baby. It works. There are more than 4,500 kids alive today because their moms changed their mind. They decided they didn't want to go through with the abortion and they were able to get help. The abortion industry is trying to shut that down. If you look at anything coming out of ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, any kind of medical journal, they will talk about this being as junk science, an unproven method. They go after it as fake, and yet it is the same procedure that is used. If a woman goes to her doctor and they say, oh, you could be at risk of losing this baby, let's give you, a treatment of progesterone to, make sure that that baby has enough nourishment in the uterus. That is a normal practice that doctors have been doing for decades. They give the woman an extra dose of progesterone to prevent miscarriage. And yet, when a doctor tries to do the same thing to reverse or rescue an abortion pill, sort of the woman wants to change her mind, they are going after the doctors. And in fact, in Colorado, they passed a law that any medical personnel who participates in the abortion pill reversal process would be found guilty of unprofessional conduct. I think it's Vermont that's going after the doctors now, saying that if you help with the abortion pill rescue, I think it's medical malpractice there. It's a procedure that they've been doing for decades, and yet they're not supposed to do it to save that baby and to reverse the abortion. They are doing everything they can to remove choices from women. No abortion pill reversal, no pregnancy center, no informed consent that you even know what's going to happen. They want to force her into the abortion. And I keep asking myself, why? What difference does it make? If she wants the abortion and you're providing it, you should be happy. If she doesn't want the abortion, why are you trying to take away her choices? The only thing I've been able to come up with that makes sense to me, and I am certainly willing to, hear other arguments because I may be totally wrong, but I think we are so focused on saving planet Earth that some people have to be eliminated. There's too many people on the planet. And, every once in a while I think I shouldn't say this out loud because people are going to think I'm crazy. But I think it's a population control effort. And I don't know how concerted it is, but there's got to be something going on that not only are they trying to push women into the abortions, they don't want women to even know that there are other options. The dead baby is supposed to be the only result. And I find that very scary. And I'm pushing back on it as hard as I can. Anytime I talk to a reporter, I say, they're no longer pro-choice. They cannot use that label because they are removing choices from women. And I've had a couple that even representing, traditionally pro-abortion outlets, newsletters, will kind of like, I hadn't thought of it that way. And I don't know if it's going to make any difference, but I'm pushing. Then look at what the pro-life movement is doing for these women. The pregnancy centers, of course, they are what I call the arms of the pro-life movement, working, day in and day out with the women and helping them to improve their situation and get the help that they need so that they can be good moms and take care of their children. Tax credits. Many states are putting in tax credits for the baby, or they're doing, you can get extra deductions if you are donating to the pregnancy centers. Some of the states actually have a grant program that to help pregnant moms, and the pregnancy centers can apply for the grant money from the state to help them. We've got states that have put together, I know some of them call it EMMA, Every Mom Matters Act. And it's a way of pulling together all the information from both private and public sector, what services, what resources are available, so that a woman can say, I can get support here, I can get support here, I can get help here, to make her realize that the community is there and is going to work with her. Churches are adopting young moms. What do you need? Do you need a ride to your job? There's an organization out of Texas, Embrace Grace, that is doing amazing work. They try to get churches around the country to adopt a pregnancy center, and then they can work with that center for any moms that need special attention. They told a story about one mom who was just really struggling, and because of a little girl saying, well, how come she can't get to work? How come she's taking Uber to work? It's not expensive. Well, let's do a cookie drive. And they raised enough money that they were able to help with a lot of services. But then a family in the church actually donated a car that they weren't really using. So there are so many stories abound in this country of people coming forward to reach out to help these moms. The health departments in some of the states are putting up new programs so that a health nurse can go into the home of a new mom and a baby to just do general health and wellness checkups, to find out, answer any questions. The mom might be worried because, her son was coughing more than usual or something, and, just kind of make sure that everything is going okay. But the pro-life movement is the one that is reaching out to help the women and the babies. The abortion industry and the so-called pro-choice movement doesn't care about the woman. They only want a dead baby. And I'm doing everything I can to get that message out there, to wake up people that this isn't a baby versus mommy, baby versus, woman, woman versus fertilized egg. This is us helping moms and babies, the abortion industry only wanting a dead baby. And, I'm going to push that as hard as I can. One of the things that the abortion industry has done is that they're good at studies. So there was a study out at the University of San Francisco when they call it the turnaway study. And the whole thing went into how many women regretted or were upset because they were denied an abortion. Maybe they went to the abortionist and the state law said that abortion is only allowed for 12 weeks, and she was at 13 weeks. And they said, we can't do the abortion. And they were talking about how many women regret that abortion, regret being denied the abortion. And yet their same study found that 5 years later, 95% of the women who couldn't get an abortion say that it was the right decision, and they were really happy with the way it turned out. They don't care about what the women are facing, and we need to just make sure that we are doing everything we can to help women and let people know that we're the ones that care about both. So that's my sermon for tonight. If anyone has questions, I'd be happy to. Oh, I didn't realize I've been doing so much talking. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
If there's any questions, happy to.
I think that your comments on, population and population control are definitely worth thinking about. I often also think that, one of the reasons that push is happening is because is this desire to live this fantasy of sexual freedom without consequence, right? And so if we can just carry on that fantasy, right? And abortion allows that. And we see that happening even with cohabitation and other life issues that are related to abortion, right? This idea that I can be free to make my own decisions, a God unto myself, and decisions about my body and my future, right? And I think whenever we start to think in terms of me being in control of my life, right? Me being my own little g God, we start to have life issues.
Yes,
right?
we do.
Even at the end of life. So, other questions you guys have? Go ahead.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. This is more of a comment, but I think one of the things that's very concerning for the pro-life movement is the issue of free speech around abortion right now, because one of the best ways to reach someone when they're going through like an unplanned pregnancy is through a relationship and through talking to them. So, for instance, I recently watched this movie, which is based on a book. This girl named, I think it was Gabby Richardson, wrote a book called The Pregnancy Project. And she basically made it her high school senior project to fake a pregnancy and write up a report on basically how differently she was treated that academic year based on her pregnancy. And one of the only encouraging and empowering voices in her life was her biology teacher, who would meet with her and talk about ways to go to college while raising a kid if she wanted to keep the kid, or kind of stuff like this. And what we're hearing about forcing people on college campuses to push a certain narrative on abortion and everything, it's really an attempt to kill the last line of defense. I mean, you can go past any billboards, you can read any brochures, but what really matters is having someone who will talk to you and tell the truth about what you can do and that they'll help you. And I don't know, it just really struck me that that's a very concerning and very dangerous thing that we're starting to see, that people can't speak about abortion anymore.
That's true. I have actually seen articles where they're starting to compare us to insurrectionists because we don't want to let people vote on ballot measures. Or that we're trying to, it's the will of the people that the Constitution in a particular state allows abortion. And if you oppose that, then you are an insurrectionist. So I think it's going to get tougher. And we're going to have strong backbones and be in touch with God and pray for strength, because I think it is going to get tougher for us in the coming years. I hope I'm wrong, but be prepared. Be prayed up.
And we know, from scripture, when those hardships happen, when they come, we know God can use them for good. And we know that in those times when people see those who are innocent being persecuted, that actually pulls more people to the faith. So if that is the case, and I think you're not the only one predicting that, Carol, then to God be the glory. That we might rise to the occasion, that the Holy Spirit might work through us to make a good confession as we uphold lives, so that others might come to know Him. Right? I mean, that is what we are about. Right? So, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate your insight and the history that you shared with us and the work you are doing. Have a great evening. Thanks for joining us for today's life topic. Check out whyforlife.org or email Michelle at whyforlife.org to find out how and when you can go live with us at our next Chats for Life session. Or join us next time, right here at Why for Life Podcasts, where youth learn how to be gospel-motivated voices for life.